thinking about selling a property you own. It can be pretty exciting, but then there's that other thought, right? The one about, well, capital gains taxes. You might be wondering, is there a smart way around that? Maybe defer those taxes and, keep your money working.
Absolutely. There's a strategy, a really key one for real estate investors called the 1031 exchange. Basically, it lets you sell an investment property, take those proceeds, and roll them into a similar like-kind property. And the big thing, you put off paying the capital gains tax, at least for a while.
A 1031 exchange. Okay, yeah, that sounds crucial for investing. And I guess there are companies that specialize in this. I've heard of Realty Exchange Corporation. They seem pretty focused on it.
That's right. Realty Exchange Corporation, they've definitely carved out a niche there. Their whole operation is geared towards helping investors navigate these exchanges. Can be complex, doesn't matter if it's residential rentals, big commercial buildings, or even, smaller deals. They've really centered their expertise on making these work smoothly and maximizing those tax benefits for investors like you. So, yeah, the goal for this deep dive is really to get into the nuts and bolts of the 1031, looking through the lens of what they do. Hopefully give you some clarity, some actionable stuff.
Right, so let's dig in. What makes their expertise, particularly valuable when you're looking at these tax-deferred deals? Why go with a specialist like them?
Well, it's the depth, really. It's not just knowing the basic 1031 rules. Their team understands the tax code, obviously, but also the practical side, property management issues that might come up, the legal stuff with contracts, and all the specific regulations around the exchanges themselves.
So a whole package deal kind of knowledge.
Exactly. It's comprehensive. That means they can often spot potential problems before they happen, make sure everything's buttoned up correctly. The aim is always to get to the best possible tax outcome. Real estate deals, they have lots of moving parts.
Oh, definitely.
Having that kind of focus expertise can just make the whole thing, well, simpler.
Yeah, I can see that. And navigating the rules, the regulations, that seems critical, especially because things change, right? Tax laws aren't exactly static. How does a firm like Realty Exchange Corporation help people deal with market uncertainty or, say, potential changes in the law affecting 1031s?
That is a super important point. These rules, they can evolve. You might remember a few years back under the Biden administration, there was talk, a proposal actually, about capping the deferral at $500,000 per person.
Oh, right. I remember that causing some buzz.
It did. It didn't end up passing, but it definitely made investors think, what if? It highlighted that these things aren't guaranteed forever. Now, currently, under President Trump's administration, the general feeling is it's a more stable environment for 1031s. But, and this is key, Realty Exchange Corporation stresses that they're always watching. They monitor the legislative landscape constantly for any signs of risk that could impact investors using this strategy.
Okay, so it's not just knowing the rules today, but keeping an eye on the horizon. What might be coming down the track? That makes total sense. You wouldn't want your whole long-term plan built on rules that could shift under your feet.
Precisely. And that really shows the value of a specialist, right?
Yeah.
They're not just processing paperwork. They're engaged with what's happening policy-wise and can advise you with those potential future changes in mind.
Yeah.
That kind of proactive approach, it's huge for long-term planning.
It's like having a lookout, basically,
Yeah.
watching for potential storms. Okay, switching gears slightly, the material we looked at also talked about empathy
Mhm.
and having an investor-focused approach at Realty Exchange. How does that actually play out?
Yeah, that was interesting. It seems their whole philosophy is grounded in really getting the investor's point of view. They understand that selling one property, buying another, is not just numbers on a page. It involves big life choices sometimes, the headaches of managing property, the tax maze. There was even that little story about the founder, Bill Horan, telling his son, Jeff, to always focus on the investor's journey, what they're going through.
Ah, okay.
So this kind of empathy, it means they try to dig into your specific goals, your challenges. Doesn't matter if you've done this a dozen times or if it's your first investment property.
So not just a one-size-fits-all service. They actually try and tailor things.
That's the idea. Because they take that time up front to understand what you're aiming for. The guidance they give can be more, well, insightful. They can craft solutions that really fit your unique situation, your needs. That personal element can be really valuable with something this significant.
Yeah, I bet. Now, you also mentioned some specific, maybe more innovative solutions they offer. Delaware statutory trusts, DSTs, and owner financing came up. How do those fit in?
Right. DSTs and owner financing. These are great examples of how they go beyond just the standard 1031. Delaware statutory trusts, or DSTs, are a fascinating option, especially if you're thinking about maybe downsizing your management load or diversifying, but you still want that 1031 tax deferral.
Okay, how does that work exactly?
With a DST, you're basically buying a slice, a fractional interest in a larger property, or maybe a portfolio of properties that's professionally managed. So the day-to-day headaches, finding tenants, fixing leaks, that shifts away from you.
Ah, I see. So good for maybe older investors or someone just wanting less active involvement.
Could be, yeah. It's definitely appealing for people maybe nearing retirement or just looking for a more passive real estate investment that still qualifies for the 1031.
Interesting. And what about the owner financing piece?
Owner financing is another place where they get strategic. They know that how you structure the sale itself can really impact your taxes. So they can help clients set up owner financing deals, maybe like an installment sale, in a
Yeah.
way that lines up with their bigger tax picture, their retirement goals.
Spreading out the tax hit, maybe.
Potentially, yes. Things like installment sales can sometimes allow you to spread the capital gains tax liability over several years instead of taking it all at once. These kinds of solutions, DSTs, owner financing strategies, they really show Realty Exchange is thinking about your long-term financial health, not just the immediate deal.
It sounds like education must be a big part of their process, too. The notes mention they're committed to making sure investors understand the tax side of selling property. Why is that so crucial?
Oh, it's absolutely vital. Because, like the info suggested, a lot of investors, especially if they're new to 1031s, might not fully grasp everything involved when they sell. It's not only capital gains, you've also got depreciation recapture to think about.
Right, depreciation recapture. That can be a surprise tax bill for some people.
It really can. So Realty Exchange puts a big emphasis on educating clients about these details, making sure you understand the nuances so you can make smart, informed decisions.
Can you give an example of how that education helps someone practically?
Sure. The material mentioned a scenario like a client selling off a few smaller properties and then maybe reinvesting that money into a larger number of, say, smaller rental units. By understanding the tax consequences of each sale and the potential upside of diversifying like that, maybe lowering their overall tax risk, creating more steady income, they can make a much more strategic play.
Got it.
And it's through knowing all the options, a straight exchange, maybe a DST, maybe something else, that you can really plan effectively for the future tax-wise.
That definitely underscores the value of knowing what you're doing or working with someone who does. Okay, lastly, the source material pointed out that Realty Exchange Corporation is a family business, long history, kind of a generational wisdom thing. How does that benefit clients?
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect. The continuity you get with a family business that's been around for decades, that's quite something. You've got knowledge transfer, experience being passed down, Bill Horan's experience, his market insights, getting passed to his son, Jeff. So you get this blend, historical perspective combined with modern approaches.
A mix of old school wisdom and new strategies.
Kind of, yeah. And that long-term view, it tends to build trust, stability. It suggests they're not just about the quick transaction, they're likely focused on building lasting relationships. They're focused on integrity, deep industry knowledge. It all paints a picture of a partner you can probably rely on over time.
So wrapping up, it really sounds like Realty Exchange Corporation offers a very complete package for anyone looking at a 1031 exchange.
I think that's fair to say. They bring together that deep technical expertise on tax deferral. They keep an eye on the changing market and rules. They seem genuinely focused on what the individual investor needs. And they offer these innovative tools like DSTs and strategic financing.
Plus the education piece and that long history.
Right. Add in the commitment to education and their history as a family firm. And yeah, they come across as a very knowledgeable, dependable resource in what can be a pretty complicated area.
So for anyone listening who's maybe got a property sale on the horizon and is thinking about 1031s, sounds like talking to a firm like Realty Exchange Corporation could be a really smart first step.
Absolutely. They seem to have the specialized know-how, the tailored advice, and these creative solutions that can help you navigate the whole process and, work towards hitting your investment targets tax efficiently.
That's a great summary. Really helpful. Now, here's a final thought for you to chew on. How could really getting to grips with these kinds of sophisticated tax deferral strategies in real estate, like the 1031 exchange we've been discussing, fundamentally change how you approach your long-term property investments and maybe even ultimately how you build wealth? Definitely something worth pondering as you think about your next move in the real estate world.